Matthew Livelsberger. Yeah, we're going to talk about it right now.
This is real. Just stop. Here's Ross, the host with today's dose of common sense.
Hey, everybody, good morning, and welcome back to the podcast. Like the intro says, this is really just stop. So, wow, 2025, off to an interesting start. Not a good one either. So, as of yesterday, there's been a lot of talk about Matthew Livelsberger, the guy who blew up the Cybertruck outside of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. So I figured we might as well talk about it because there's been quite a lot that's come out in the last 24 hours or so, thanks to the Sean Ryan show. We're going to talk about that too. But we're going to read the letter that he sent to someone else prior to the incident, and it's interesting. It's interesting, but apparently Livelsberger was I don't know what was going on. If you heard a weird echo, I'm sorry. But Livelsberger was an active duty Special Forces soldier. He was stationed in Germany, which with the 10th Special Forces Group, which I'm assuming is still in Bad Tolls. There's a army post there in Bad Tolls, Germany. If it's still there, I don't know if they moved them or not, but it said Germany and 10th, so I'm assuming same place. It's been there for decades, and it had an NCO academy there back when they called it Primary Leadership Development Course. And so when you were in that region of Germany, when you had to go to PLDC, that's where they sent you. They sent you to Bad Tolls, and you went to the NCO academy there. So several of my friends went through it there, and I was there a couple of times to visit and to watch people graduate, things like that. So at Bad Tolls, during the time that I was there in the late 80s, they had a detachment of Rangers there. I'm not sure how many, but they had Rangers there. They had Green Berets, and those are the people who actually ran the NCO Academy at the PLDC. And so I'll tell you a couple of interesting stories. When I was down there, the first time I went to Bad Tolls, I was a shiny PFC, and I was there to watch a guy from my squad graduate from PLDC. And if I'm not mistaken, back then PLDC was like 30 or 45 days. I don't remember which, but it was longer than it is now. They call it Warrior Leadership Course now, I think. But it was longer back then, and probably better, because most things were better in the old days. I don't care what anybody says. It's true, especially when it comes to the military. So anyway, I'm down there. Clean cut military police, PFC. And these officers approach me, and he's not wearing a cover or anything, but he's still got captain's bars on his collar. We had the rank on our collars back then, wearing BDUs. And so I snap to and I pop a salute and I say, "Good morning, sir." And he says, "Fuck off, private," and walked away. That was my first experience with a Special Forces officer at Bad Tolls. Yeah, so that was fun. And another guy came up to me later, and he saw what happened, and the staff sergeant comes up and he says, "No, don't take that personally. We don't salute each other around here in this part of the thing, because whatever." And so it was funny, and but I think it hurt my feelings as a young PFC to have that happen, because I had a beautiful salute. Anyway, moving on. I'm assuming that that's still where the 10th is. Somebody can fill me in, and if they moved or relocated, or if Bad Tolls isn't even there anymore. So that might be from, I guess I could have researched that, but I'm not going to, because, I was going to tell you a fun story anyway. So he was home back in the United States on approved leave. He came home on leave. The last thing I read said that he was a 19-year veteran, so he was approaching retirement time in service. if he wanted to retire. One report said that he was talking about retirement. He was looking forward to retirement or whatever. And then he comes home and he blows up a Cybertruck in front of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. He was from Colorado, and that's where he rented the Cybertruck, and then he drove it to Las Vegas and packed it full of fuel canisters and large firework mortars and things like that. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to be critical and say, oh, who would have thought that was going to make an explosion? Everybody who knows anything about explosives would have thought that that would cause an explosion if they were chained together properly, if there was a proper ignition method. Because there are plenty of videos out there of firework factories exploding and basically turning into little tiny pieces of stuff floating in the air. So you're dealing with large quantities of black powder, smokeless powder, gunpowder, things, that are packed tightly inside of containers. Now, these containers are typically like cardboard, um, or they can be metal because it's a mortar. It's shooting a different firework straight up into the air, way up into the sky, and then it blows up and it makes the pretty thing, right? So that type of thing that blows up in the sky like that, it's a pretty significant blast. And if you put a bunch of them together, it can be deadly. People die from firework explosions every year. So adding in the fuel canisters and camping fuel, which I don't know, they described it as camping fuel. I don't know if they're talking about gas for like a gas grill or if they're talking about kerosene for lamps, your old kerosene lanterns and things like that. I don't know what they were. They just called it camping fuel and other fuel canisters. So I have a theory about this, but the latest um, information about this is that he shot himself in the head right before the explosion happened. So I don't know if I can pull it up, but if you slow down the explosion, the video that they have of the explosion, you do see a blast that comes out the driver's side window first. So that's either some form of a large detonator that he had, something that he built that was going to create a large enough detonation to blow up everything in the back, or it could have been him shooting himself in the head with a Desert Eagle 50 Action Express, which is going to make quite a mess. But it's it's like a millisecond before the truck explodes. So I assumed it was some sort of initiator. But then now the police and the FBI are saying that he actually shot himself just before the thing went off. So he may have pulled the igniter and then shot himself, and there was a delay. Who knows? But anyway, ugly scene. But I think, and this is just a theory of mine, I haven't heard anybody talk about it yet. I think he assumed that the structure of the Cybertruck would compress the explosion, kind of like the canister of a pipe bomb would, and cause it to, have more energy when it exploded. And I don't think he took into account the lighter material that covers the truck bed, because that's where the explosion went out. It went straight up out through the truck bed cover, and which isn't going to be nearly as thick as the stainless steel panels and stuff and the underneath where all the battery compartments are. So I think he thought it might act as a container, just like a pipe bomb. Can't say that's really what he thought. He didn't say anything about that. He did say he had a massive VBIED. Uh, in this letter, he sent a letter. He sent an email to a couple of people, and we're going to get to that. But yeah, pretty interesting. I think it was like a miscalculation. And the other thing is, I've seen so many people talking about things like, oh, the special forces guy would have been much better at building a bomb and all these other things. And listen, they don't. You may understand VBIEDs. You might even know the basics of how one is constructed or whatever, but it's not always likely that you're going to know how to build one yourself. They have people who specialize in those sorts of things, people in EOD who disassemble them and render them safe and stuff like that. So your average person, even if they're in the special forces or whatever, isn't going to know how to build a giant bomb. But it's not hard. And that's the thing that has always frightened me is that it's not hard. Timothy McVeigh did a pretty good job of it, and he was just a grunt. He was an 11 Bravo, I think. Isn't that what he was? I think he was just a grunt or a tanker or whatever he was in the Gulf War. Um, but he was pretty successful in building one, a much more successful one than this Green Beret did. So people have to stop associating people's jobs in the military and thinking that people in the military know everything. They don't. You learn like a very specific thing. Um, and people you may not understand know explosives. You should understand explosives. Whatever I'm trying to say. People that you wouldn't suspect would know things about explosives may likely be the ones who do, because uh, I was trained in the use of explosives. I wasn't any kind of super secret squirrel guy. I was a military policeman when I learned that, but it was for a very specific reason. So they taught us about blasting caps and det cord and shaped charges and C4 and all these other things because we had to use them for something. And I'm not going to go into it right now, but it was a part of my job as a military policeman, believe it or not. So I was trained in those things. We all were. Not all MPs, but all of us in that unit and similar units that were, throughout Europe. And that actually helped me get one of my first jobs when I got out of the military because I was an explosives technician for a while for a construction company. I blew things up because I learned how to do that. And that job sucked. If you're wondering, it sucked. It was way too much work. You spent all day drilling holes in rocks and stuff with a giant, I don't know, that thing had to weigh 60 pounds drill. And then you laid your explosives and you had that 4 or 5 second joy of boom, whee, go drill some more holes. The job sucked because when I took the job, we were doing it in the middle of winter outside, which is where you would be blowing things up, would be outside. Anyway, you can't always judge someone's experience or knowledge and say this person wouldn't have known how to do that just based on their job or their MOS in the military or anything like that. You just can't because you can learn these things on your own even. You don't have to be a genius. It doesn't take an Einstein to know how to decide, hey, if I put enough of this explosive material in one place and blow it up with something else, I can make a bomb. It doesn't take a genius to do it. Any hillbilly who goes down to the store and buys some tannerite and plays around with it by shoving it into an old microwave and nearly takes his own head off with a flying door, they understand it, and they weren't trained by anybody. It's just not that complicated. You can make it very complicated. You can do the Ted Kaczynski thing and you create these very complicated igniters and initiators and triggers and all these other things. And but you don't have to. And if you're going to build a vehicle into a bomb, you definitely don't have to, especially if it's going to be a command detonation. The person is literally going to push a button or whatever and do it. I mean, come on. Stop acting like there has to be a conspiracy because of this or that when it comes to explosions, because I'll say it again, it does not take an Einstein to figure out how to do it. There's a lot of kids who play around with fireworks every year who would know how to build a better one than that guy did. And if you think that's wrong, hey, just listen. On the 4th of July, some dumbass down the street from you is setting off something that's, the equivalent of 4 sticks of dynamite. So, anyhow, that's a little off topic, but it didn't work very well. The Cybertruck body, the panels actually contained the explosive enough that it didn't go sideways or forward and back. It all blew upward through the thinner bed cover. So, made a big mess, injured some people, probably just by heat blast or some flying debris, because, pieces of that cover and windows and stuff had to blow somewhere. So, but all those injuries were minor, and I think the fire was contained even, so there was some damage there, but nothing critical. Um, but that's my opinion about it. I think he miscalculated the construction of the container, and because I don't think it would have been a big enough statement to just start a fire. I don't think that was his intention. That would be stupid. And if you were going to do that, you didn't need all those, canisters, those firework mortars and stuff like that. You just didn't need that. So you could have just had all the fuel canisters and things like that. So, and, put a small amount of explosive in there and poof, and blow the burning fuel around things and start a fire. So, um, but he apparently he tried to contact a couple of people and wasn't actually successful because no one really talked to him. And because for the most part, they didn't know why this person was trying to contact them until afterward. And then they're like, hey, wait. They went and looked through their stuff and said, okay, I got an email from this guy. And poor Tim Kennedy, who I don't know, but we have some mutual acquaintances. Um, he knew the guy and didn't realize that he knew the guy, which was kind of funny because he got on X and said, "Hey, does anybody know this guy?" Because Tim Kennedy is also a special forces soldier, and asked if anybody knew who this guy was within the community, and people came back and said, "Yeah, you do." Because they participated in some sort of television, military contest together as a team. And at first, he didn't even realize it was that guy because the guy went by a different name. He had abbreviated his name into Matt Berg instead of Matthew Livelsberger. And apparently Tim Kennedy had changed his name for the show too, and they were calling him Tim Kelly instead of Kennedy. But so it was kind of comical that he asked who knew him, and the community note on X said, "You do." So, and he had to go, "Oh, wow, you're right. Holy crap, I didn't even realize that was this guy." But he sent an email, and I'm going to open up the screen share stuff again. Sorry for the people who don't like this, but here we go. And if you're not here, oh, that didn't even work. Let me go. I don't know where my screen share went. I don't know what's happening. But give me a second and let me figure this out because it's not showing me the thing. All right, never mind. Something happened to my Chrome. So, all right, let me try this again. There it is. Okay, I'm going to move it around a little bit so those of you who are on YouTube can read it. But it's from Newsweek, which, hack organization. It's not there because I'm going there. It's because this one has the information that I want to read. But anyway, Matthew Livelsberger alleged manifesto, and he sent an email to I forget his name. It's Schumott, I think. Yeah, Sam Schumott. So he apparently has his own shows, and I don't know if he does YouTube videos or whatever, but I don't know who he is, but he says he's a retired U.S. Army intelligence officer. He may very well be. I don't know. I know that there are some people who don't like him because I found some things like that on the internet. Because apparently he is prone to spreading misinformation. So you have that. I don't know myself because I had never heard of this person until yesterday. So he was on the Sean Ryan show because Livelsberger sent him an email, contacted him on Instagram a couple of times, finally got a hold of him, said, "Hey, I'm going to send you an email." Sends him this email, and the email contains what people are starting to call his manifesto, but it's a little short to be a manifesto. It's really just an email. And in it, he doesn't say he's going to blow himself up or anything. He doesn't say that. So, this email and the incident and revealing his identity and all of these other things have combined to create a perfect storm of bullshit to create a conspiracy theory. So, there's a whole bunch of them out there, and I'll show you those as well. But how it went down was, like I said, he contacted him, said, "Hey, can you get me in touch with Sean Ryan and stuff like that?" And the guy's Schumott is like, "I don't know Sean Ryan. I can't put you in touch with him." So the guy sends him an email and asks if he can, spread it around or whatever. And after this all happens, Schumott apparently realizes, oh, this is the guy who emailed me. The guy who blew himself up is the guy who emailed me. So then he started talking to people within their own little communities and was able to get in touch with Sean Ryan. And Sean Ryan interviewed him on his podcast. So I'm going to, uh, you know, split off here for a second because I have to explain some stuff. I don't care for the Sean Ryan podcast. Sean Ryan show is what it's called. Um, I've watched several episodes only because the guest that was on was interesting to me. I find it really grating to listen to that podcast. Sean Ryan is the worst interviewer I think I have ever encountered, ever, literally. If you were just listening and not watching the thing with changing camera angles, you might believe that Sean Ryan is asleep during the podcast because he basically just grunts and makes guttural noises and makes one word statements like, interesting, really. And that's the extent of the whole thing. The person on the other side just rambles for 2 hours or an hour and a half or an hour. That's it. He doesn't guide the conversation at all. He doesn't keep a person on track. And when he interviews someone who can't stay on track, it's absurd. I have to turn it off because he's just terrible at this. I don't know how he became like the second most popular podcaster on the planet with millions of followers. Because if you want to talk about professional interviewers and things like that, and Joe Rogan being the most popular podcaster on earth, Joe Rogan isn't very good at that either. And so, but he's also very popular. I do listen to his show fairly often because he has good guests on. But um, Joe's better at it than Sean Ryan is. But Sean Ryan isn't even a close second or anything. But anyway, I don't get it. But lately, Sean Ryan has had guests on who are just absurd. And it has been a parade of grifters and lunatics on his show for the last several months. So, of course, I've had to listen because I want to watch the train wreck just like everybody else. And it's a giant shit show. So, it's hard for me to take the show seriously when he's sitting across from a guy who claims that he had dinner with a bunch of aliens yesterday or whatever the guy is saying. And he doesn't even challenge the guy on that. He's just like, yeah, oh, wow, that must have been interesting. Well, yeah, I don't know. It probably would be if it was true. Anyway, if you've never listened to it, you're not missing anything. I had to say that I don't get it. But Sean Ryan doesn't challenge anyone on anything. People will come on his show and they can say whatever absurd bullshit they want. And he never pushes back on anything. He's just like, wow, okay, wow. Hey, tell me more about that. Interesting. That's it. That's the extent of the interview. Hey, you start talking. I'm going to get a manicure or something while you're doing that. Just do whatever you want. I'm just going to sit here and grunt things occasionally. And hey, nobody watches my podcast. Nobody listens to my podcast. I think I have like 42 listeners. So he's doing something I'm not doing, but it's probably just because he's a former Navy SEAL and they used to work for the CIA as a contractor. That's like instant fame during the GWAT period, the global war on terrorism, because people think that SEALs and stuff know everything. No, you don't even have to be smart. Okay. There are a lot of dumb people who are good at certain things, but it doesn't mean they're smart people. You can be a damn good Navy SEAL and be pretty dense. And that's been pretty evident just based on quite a few people who have been in the spotlight in the last 25 years. You can be a really good Navy SEAL and be dumb as shit. But if you're good at the things that SEALs have to do, you're a great Navy SEAL. And the same is true for sailors, people in the Army, people in the Marines. People make fun of Marines all the time. Marines are dumb as shit. Yeah, but who do you want next to you in a fight? You want a goddamn Marine, is what you want. Because they're going to fight. Um, so you don't have to be smart to be able to do these things. And believe it or not, a lot of cops aren't smart either. So a lot of these people who are in positions that are like have a lot of authority and a lot of responsibility, and they actually have other people's lives in their very hands. A lot of them are dumb as shit. And if you don't understand that, I'm sorry. And if you're one of those occupations, I'm sorry. You may be one of the smart ones. I have known some very smart ones. I've known some cops who probably had genius level IQs, and they didn't shoot people at traffic stops. I don't know how that works out. They didn't shoot unarmed people in their own homes because someone called for a wellness check. Life's different for smart people, apparently. And hey, not totally critical. I used to work in law enforcement. I understand. I know what goes on. I'm sorry. A lot of you are just dumb and make really dumb decisions. And I think in general, people understand that. It's not the smartest people who are going to do these jobs for, the pay that they get. Cops don't make a lot of money. Neither do Navy SEALs. They're on a government pay scale, just like everyone else. So if you're a E6 Navy cryptographer and you're an E6 Navy SEAL, you're, you know, like in the Army, you would have airborne pay. There were people who got flight pay. You get, you know, danger pay, what they used to call it. Now they call it something else, hostile environment, whatever. So you might get some extra perks in pay, a couple extra $100 a month or something, but your base salary is the same as the guy who doesn't kick in doors and go headbutt terrorists. So yeah, it's not always the smartest people doing these things, but they're really good at what they do. I don't even know how I got started on that, but I'm just telling you, you can't put faith in someone's knowledge and their intelligence just because they had a super cool job. The only exception I have to that I found in the military, and I'm sorry this is going to offend a lot of people, um, because I encountered dumb people in every job during my career in the military, including my own. And the only group of people that I've met several of and can use as a baseline who I've never encountered one who was stupid was Delta Force. It's that simple. I don't know. Rangers, Marines, regular Army grunts, Army personnel, Navy SEALs, you know. EOD guys are usually very smart too, so let me add them in, but I haven't got that much experience with them. I've met a few over the years, and they all were pretty smart dudes. But the only like door kickers, hunter killer dudes that I ever met that I was, confident that the majority of them were going to be smart people was Delta. Um, anyhow, I just hate it when people say, well, this guy was a Navy SEAL. He knows everything. No, he doesn't. He knows how to be a Navy SEAL. It doesn't make him an expert on, international politics. Geopolitics doesn't make him an expert on conflict in general. It makes him an expert on what his job is. And, people get confused after all these years. People still think people in the military know stuff. And that's why they're talking about put all these infantrymen in the schools to protect the children. No. Have you ever seen the infantry work? No. You don't put them in the schools with the children. You don't tell them to return fire if somebody starts shooting. No, no. Out in the middle of a desert somewhere? Yes, works fine. Works great. In the middle of a town that's turned to rubble because it's in the middle of a war zone? Sure, sure. Knock yourselves out. In a school? No. Anyway, now those of you who know infantrymen, you know what I'm talking about. So, enough of that. But so I think that's why Sean Ryan is popular, just because of his background as a Navy SEAL and a CIA contractor. And I'm not saying he's stupid entirely, but that's the way he comes across. He's not engaging. He's not good at interviewing. None of that. So he comes across as someone who just isn't really that bright. But that's where we're going to get this information from about the Livelsberger guy and his email. But the problem is that Ryan sat down with Schumann and they talked about it and recorded it and edited it and put it on the internet before giving the information they had to the authorities. That is problematic for me because you have Sean Ryan during the podcast that he posted saying, yeah, we better put this stuff together and we'll have to get that to the FBI and stuff and do that. Really? You're thinking about that now. You didn't think to do that first and then do a podcast and say, hey, we turned all this stuff over to the FBI because we found this out. No, you're going to do that after you sit down and record it and post it on the internet after it's edited in the whole 9 yards. Then you're going to, talk to the FBI about the things that you know, but you wanted to get that podcast out first. That's a problem for me. That's an integrity issue for me. The first thing I would have done was call the FBI and say, this guy tried to contact me 2 days ago. I have this thing. How do I get it to you? And then later that day, maybe you do a podcast and you say, hey, I just came back from the FBI field office. We were talking about that. I had to turn over some stuff because, hey, this dude called me and left a message on my phone or whatever it is. Stupid. You're admitting to everybody, you're showing the world that it was more important for you to make money and to gain popularity and to be on the nightly news than it was to get critical information to the FBI during an investigation. I don't know, that's bad form to me. I don't like it. So, a third of the way into this thing, I was already pissed off because I'm like, what do you mean you're going to talk to the FBI later? Why didn't you do that already? To me, it was just ridiculous. So, yeah, not a fan. So, you can defend him all you want to. It's fine. I know a lot of people love him. I know people who know him, and they say he's a great guy. Probably is, but doesn't make good decisions. I can tell you that right now, because after he did talk to the FBI, I wonder if the FBI said, "Why the fuck didn't you call us yesterday? Why did you sit on this until you could do a podcast?" Because if I was the FBI special agent in charge, that's exactly what I would have said. But I wasn't there, so I couldn't do that because I'm just a lowly little podcaster too. I just have more integrity, I guess. Anyhow, Livelsberger, now that I've been ranting for a while, he sent this email, and the email talks about a few things. There's talk about 2019 airstrikes in Nimruz province, Afghanistan, that apparently killed civilians, and he claims to have been a targeter on that operation, those operations that were targeting drug facilities. And they knew they were causing civilian casualties, apparently, and nobody cared. And the UN investigated and said, yes, these were unlawful strikes. These were like civilian targets that should have been handled by law enforcement, and the military and the CIA had no business running these kind of, operations, dropping drone strikes on people when this is something the police should have handled, that kind of stuff. um, which, you know, right or wrong, I sort of agree with the guy, but when you're dealing with something in the middle of Afghanistan, yeah, it's kind of hard to send in the NYPD and have them go knock on the door and serve a warrant. So if you're going to drop, if you're going to try to take them out, yeah, a drone strike is going to be the way you do it. But whether these were legitimate targets under the laws of war, laws of armed conflict, I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know all the details. I've read a little bit about it since seeing this post, but not enough for me to be able to have an educated opinion on whether it should have happened or not. The civilian casualties is always bad, and there was a lot of it in Afghanistan and Iraq, and other places around the world. And I wish it was a lot more avoidable. But in some cases, a lot of these bad guys operate right in the middle of civilian populations. And yeah, they surround themselves with civilians and children and women and all sorts of things. And so it happens, and it happens far too often. And it's always tragic. And I'm sure there's a lot of it that went on that people just don't know about. And that's been a few of the whistleblowers who've come through in the last 20 years. It's been what they've been talking about. So it does happen. I know it happens. It happened while I was there. I'm sure it happens. It happened every day of the war, probably. And it's so I can't argue with this guy about that. It's terrible. And the number of civilians who are killed is probably never actually going to be accurately divulged because no one's going to want to admit it. But anyway, he was upset about that. And probably rightfully so. Maybe it weighed on his conscience. Um, it's really early in the morning, and I haven't had enough coffee, so yeah, I'm going to stumble with my words a little bit, apparently. But the FBI has said that they believe that it's real, that it's a real email. Um, there was some question about it at first. I questioned it at first. There's something about it that doesn't sit right with me, and it might be the guy who presented it, Schumott. I don't know anything about him, but something about that guy makes you not want to trust him, which is a weird vibe to get off of a former military intelligence guy, or maybe not. But yeah, something about it when it first happened and they first started talking about it, and I watched it. Something with my wife as well. She's also experienced with interviewing people and dealing with, serial liars and career criminals and things like that. For those of you who don't know, I used to interrogate people for a living, and I used to train other people on how to interview and interrogate people. I'm talking about real interrogation. I'm not talking about, we waterboarded this guy. No, I'm talking about talking to someone as a form of interrogation, the ways that actually work better. And I did it for years. I interviewed or interrogated, depending on whether you want to be politically correct or not, um, hundreds of times, hundreds of people over the years. So I'm very familiar with when people can touch off my spidey senses, so to speak. And I can nearly always tell when someone's being dishonest. Basically, what those professional training courses you go through and all those experiences teach you is you basically become like a human lie detector because most people don't know how a lie detector works. A lie detector doesn't go, "Oh, this person's lying." A lie detector shows you the changes in the person's, physiology when they get upset or when they start telling a falsehood. That's what a lie detector does. And you can learn to do a lot of those things in person without a machine. But, there's a whole thing about laying a baseline and doing all this other stuff. It's a very complicated process that you can learn if you want to pay to take the classes. I didn't have to pay. Someone paid for me to go. The company I worked for did. But something about him triggers my senses and makes me kind of go, I don't know about this guy. That doesn't mean that what he was saying at the time wasn't true, but something about him puts me off and makes me not want to believe what he's saying. So, But the other thing that he mentioned in this email, which is causing quite a stir, is the drones. And here's a quote. Um, what we have been seeing with drones, which for some reason he put in quotations, is the operational use of gravitic propulsion systems powered aircraft by most recently China. The guy was not an author, okay, so people are going to criticize very poorly written statements. But, obviously he was upset. He was getting ready to blow himself up and shoot himself in the head. Maybe he really didn't care about grammar. Anyway, gravitic propulsion systems powered aircraft by most recently China in the East Coast, but throughout history, the U.S. Only we in China have this capability. There's a typo here in the article. Our op-in, open, what it says here, but it says op-sen, like Operation Center, location for this activity, in the box below. And basically, what I guess in the email, he put out grid coordinates or GPS coordinates, whatever it was, and they blocked it out on the thing that I saw, and they're not putting them in here. But the Sean Ryan show went to Google Maps and punched them in there and went to the place that he listed on there. And what you do is you come up with a building in the middle of the desert. So, um, but we'll get to that. But if you go search on Livelsberg, it's a really weird name to try to pronounce, and just search his name on X, you come up with all sorts of stuff. And a lot of it is going to be, of course, the Sean Ryan interview. This is the guy. That's him. Anyway, a lot of talk of the emails, some press conference stuff, but the first things you start seeing are conspiracy theories. And people talk about, oh, the Cybertruck drove itself to the hotel. So he was dead. Someone murdered him and put him in the truck, and then the truck drove itself to the hotel. Or I've seen it's not him. He's still alive. He took somebody else and murdered them. So they're trying to make this guy out to be a hero. Like he faked his death and all this stuff. Really cool. But that would also mean that he murdered someone. Doesn't make you a hero. You murder some innocent person and make people think they're you. So, yeah, he murdered someone, put them in the truck, and then remotely operated it because he was an experienced user of remotely operated vehicles, because that was what he talked about in his thing. That was one of his jobs in his later years in the military. So obviously he rigged this Cybertruck to be remotely operated, and he was just far away from there when it happened. So there was somebody else inside the truck that he murdered. I don't know. The hero thing, it doesn't add up. And then, of course, you're going to get his body was burned beyond recognition. They had to ID him with, fragments of tattoos on his body and his ID and stuff like that. And there, people will create the conspiracy just like on 9/11, which they're mentioning here, about how people's passports were found on the ground. It fell out of the airplanes and stuff, and they were intact, but the plane was incinerated and all these other things. And that, oh, his body was burned beyond recognition, but his military ID survived. Yeah, well, probably they're showing pictures of it. It's obviously burned. And yeah, if you have IDs that are wrapped up in a thick leather wallet that's under your butt when you catch on fire, it's probably going to survive. It may not be in great shape, but it's probably going to survive. Depends on how fast they put the fire out. If parts of his body survived, then the things that were in his pockets, a lot of them are going to survive too. So uh, there's always a conspiracy theory about that stuff, and it's stupid. It's people who don't understand how things work, and so their brains can't comprehend how this could happen, and so they just start making up shit in their head. But there's all sorts of them. And then, of course, Tesla put out that there's the thing with Tim Kennedy with the guy on the show who he forgot that he met because he wasn't aware that it was him. So that's them. But Tesla put out, a statement and said that the Cybertruck was not in full self-driving mode, so it couldn't have driven itself to the hotel and stuff like that. But this is bringing up a lot of other things too, is because people are a little upset with Tesla because Tesla is just ratting out everybody's personal shit. They had this guy on video at every charging station. They had all what Musk would call telemetry from the vehicle. They turned all this stuff over to the FBI and the police. And not that I'm opposed to that, but there are a lot of privacy advocates out there saying, wow, Tesla just voluntarily went over there and just handed all this stuff to them. You know, uh, makes you wonder how private you are when you're driving around in a Tesla, because apparently they know everything about you and they're following you with their sensors and stuff. And they have cameras all over the car. So they're actually videotaping you all the time, and that can be retrieved and handed over to someone else. So it's upsetting some people. But you can see it. It's just continuous stream of conspiracy theories about the ID and, oh my God. The actual email, a copy of the email has been uploaded, and some of the stuff is redacted. It had some people's names in it. But he doesn't say he's going to blow himself up. And part of it says, it kind of sounds like he's thinking about maybe just running to Mexico. But if he hadn't committed a crime yet, there wouldn't be any reason for him to run to Mexico. And so I think that's what's feeding part of the conspiracy, because they're like, well, he doesn't say he's going to blow himself up. He says he's going to go to Mexico. So, the whole thing. I'm sure the guy wasn't going to send someone an email 2 days before he did it and say, I'm going to blow myself up in front of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, because somebody at that point may have actually called someone and said, hey, this is bad. Look into this. So I'm sure in the email he wasn't going to say that he was going to do that, in case somebody read the email prior to the event. He wasn't going to want anybody to tip off the authorities. But it's pretty fascinating. I think the thing is, he was, I guess, divorcing. He was being divorced by his recent wife, which I guess wasn't his first wife. There's a lot of things like that going on. There's someone told the one guy, I guess it was Schumott, that the DNA results had recently told him that his son was not his, that the DNA didn't match and things like that. And we have no idea if any of that's true. So I don't know. Nobody knows what to believe about that, but it's rampant with conspiracy theorists all over it, talking about all sorts of things. And most of it's just bullshit. There is a guy who is talking about the Schumott guy, about how he caught him floating around misleading, misinformation email about another topic before. So I don't know. Something about the guy just sets off my radar. But I'm never going to get over the fact that they did all this, and then Ryan's like, man, we should really turn that over to the FBI. Yeah, I probably should have thought of that before sitting down and spending a few hours doing a podcast. But that's what you're going to get if you search for that. But if you can go to Sean Ryan's X, I keep still wanting to call it Twitter because who cares? But you can go to his X account, Sean Ryan 762. And because that's grown up, it's got the caliber of a rifle in his profile thing. But anyway, you can go there, and all the stuff is there. The interview is there. The information that he got is there. The email is posted. A message that the guy sent to Sean Ryan's show is up there. He put all the information out there in public, and then told everybody, hey, I'm going to disappear for a while. Me and my family are going to go into hiding. Absolutely insane. Hey, thanks for feeding the conspiracy theories, Sean. Thanks for making people think that, oh my God, now that we know about the alien aircraft, which he never said that. He said they're drones. And he's talking about a propulsion system that is, as far as anybody knows, is still theoretical. But There may be something that they're calling that, and he may be completely right, which is funny because if he is right, then I'm right because I'm the one who's been telling you that all of these things are ours and belong to us and our adversaries, and that it's state of the art, high tech craft that you're not going to learn about for a long time because they use technology that we're not really ready to share with the world yet. And so if what he says is true, then everything I've been telling you is true. So it's cool. I hope he's right because that would make me right and not aliens. Not that I'm opposed to aliens, but you know, not aliens this time. So I don't know. Everybody can let me know what you think, but it's a crazy time, man. 2025 is starting off this way. It's going to be a long year and it's going to be full of bullshit. I can feel it. But anyway, I hope everybody's safe out there. Um, yeah, not looking forward to the rest of the year if it's going to stay like this. So definitely keep your head on a swivel, like I say, and like everybody says. And watch out for strange things. If you see something, say something. But this is a picture, by the way. I'll show you this before we go. This is the coordinates, and it's a building. And if you go there, you can copy these coordinates down here at the bottom of the image and post them into Google Maps or Google Earth, whatever you want to use, and it will take you directly to this building. So it's accurate. I checked it myself. This is a very small piece of a very large complex. So, uh, actually, God, we should probably do that, shouldn't we? Want me to show it to you? And so you don't have to? All right, let's do that. I got time. I'm not doing anything else. So let's go to maps and let's. I don't know. Are you able to see this? Now I got to check this again. Yep. Okay, you can see it. So we're going to go to maps and we're going to go down here and we're going to. I don't know. Let's search with Google Lens. That's a good thing to do. If you don't know about Google Lens, it's it's a pretty sweet little program. Google with all of its scary stuff. Anyway, you can take that, you can select that text and copy it, and then you can go over here to Google Maps and you can paste, boom, those coordinates and hit enter. And then you're gonna want to see. I usually do this on my phone, so now I've got to figure out how to get the satellite. There we go, layers down there. So we want to put the satellite imagery there. So that's what we're at, and that is the building right there that shows up in those coordinates. But as you can see, it is one small building inside a giant complex in the middle of the Nevada desert. And it might sound familiar if we tell you that this here, this large, pale looking thing, that's kind of a salt flats kind of area, but that's Groom Lake. And if you zoom down here, you saw it show up. This is Groom Road. And that goes around this edge of Groom Lake. And Groom Lake, if you've been into the UAP, UFO stuff for any length of time, you've heard it before because you've heard Bob Lazar talk about it. You've heard numerous people talk about it. And what you're looking at right here is what used to be the world's longest runway, if I'm not mistaken, because this was a test range where they used to fly secret aircraft like the SR 71 and things like it, and things that have been developed since that fly really, really, really fast and have to have really, really long runways in order to land. But you can see the runway now is here and it ends here. But if you slide over here, you can zoom in on this. This is cracked up asphalt. This is old. It's no longer in use probably. So it's old cracked up asphalt that's been baking in the sun for decades. But you can see how much longer it is. This runway used to be much, much longer than it is now. and it's just they just don't need it anymore, I guess, or they built one somewhere else. But it's obvious that what they're using now is just a portion of the original runway, and they're keeping this intact because the craft that they are using now probably don't need nearly as much runway because they aren't traveling at 7,000 miles per hour. But you can see we have some F 16s here. These are going to be probably to keep spying eyes away, except for Google. But there's lots of bunkers, lots of buildings, lots of vehicles. If you go to, let's pick a place like over here, there are a lot of vehicles, a lot of trailers, a lot of trucks, a lot of white trucks and white vans and things. But that's typical government stuff. So parking lots, cars parked over here looks like civilian vehicles. So these are going to be POVs, privately owned vehicles of different people who work out here. And you're also going to see passenger planes. I have to see if I can find it again over here. Passenger planes, because you've heard all the stories of people being flown out to like Nellis test range and stuff on a private charter airline that flies employees out here to these remote sites in the desert. So I'm assuming that that's what those are. Or those are going to be test aircraft that are used for experiments or things like that. But I'm just assuming that they're going to be the planes that take people to and from. And another plane. And you're also going to see there's a Black Hawk helicopter in here somewhere. I saw it when I was looking around. So that's what he's pointing at is this. And you'll see there's, satellite dishes and stuff around. That's not the only one. There's other communications arrays and things like that throughout this complex. But how secret is it if you can see the whole fucking thing on Google Maps? Not. Not very, right? Would they be showing this to you if this was a top secret facility anymore? No. I bet if you go back 20 years, you couldn't see this on the maps. It was probably pixeled out or something or erased because that's what they used to do. Um, and I think if when I looked here before, there are spots that look like they did something to them so that you can't see stuff. Like, that's a very strange looking thing. And I'm wondering if something was sitting there. And so they didn't want it to be seen. So they covered it with whatever. And there's another spot in here where it's obviously been manipulated so that something was erased, but I'll never find it again. So, at times I'm sure they're like, we don't really want you to see this aircraft that we've got over here. You guys accidentally took a picture of it. So they'll erase it. But here's a baseball field. Yep, home plate, first, second, third, pitcher's mound. It's an odd color. It's probably fake grass because this is the middle of the frickin' desert. And it doesn't appear to be much vegetation out here. Nobody's growing grass out here in the middle of the desert. This is the most colorful thing that you'll see out there is these tarp things, these coverings, sort of like tents or canopies or whatever they are. Nobody knows what they're covering up, but it doesn't matter. Lots of these buildings, there's, probably storage spaces or whatever. But obviously not a secret, or you wouldn't be looking at it right here on Google Maps. There's another small aircraft. I thought I might find the helicopter that I saw, but it's in here somewhere. But yeah, that's what you've got. And I'm going to tell you a story. Not really going to tell you a story, but there's the helicopter up there, by the way. Right there. I think it's a Black Hawk. Is that a Black Hawk? Yeah, I think it is. So, this building, yeah, it's not really a secret. And this may not actually be the building. That's just the coordinates because I've never actually been there. But uh, I know what it is, and I know where it is, and I knew about it. That service members are remotely operating drones all around the world from this installation in Nevada. And other places too. But yes, there are people whose job is to go there and you sit down and you fly drones. Like, for instance, when I was in Afghanistan, certain assets that we had, ISR assets that we had in the sky, weren't ours. They weren't, necessarily part of the brigade or, the division or whatever. They came from other places and they were operated by people sometimes all the way back in the United States. And that's just the way it goes. So, are some of them secret propulsion system drones that people think are UFOs? I don't know. But the fact that people are remotely operating some drones from the middle of the desert in Nevada is not a secret. A lot of people knew about it. They may only now realize, wow, what that guy told me was real, because that's what someone told me. That, hey, if you're interested and anybody wants to volunteer to go out there, they were sending out requests for reservists because they needed help out there doing things. I'm assuming not flying the drones, but they needed assistance with other things out there. So they needed extra service members. This was at the height of the GWAT. And so that was quite a few years ago. And so it wasn't really a secret. And I never went out there. I don't know anybody who ever decided to take them up on that and say, yeah, I'll go out there and help. But they weren't keeping it a secret that people were out in Nevada flying drones remotely from some camp or post or whatever. So I don't know. I'm sure more and more conspiracies are going to come out about all of this stuff, but you have to be careful about, oh, this person's revealing secrets. Well, not really. If you can look at it on Google Maps, it's probably not a secret. It was a secret before, but here's the other question. Where did the top secret base go? If that one's now not top secret and you can see it on Google Maps, where's the real stuff? Where's the real secret stuff? That's the conspiracy theory that we need to look into. Because I have actually heard one, that all the stuff at Area 51 was moved. But yeah, it's probably not true. But it could be true. So I guess that's, if we can find some more about that, we'll have to do that. But anyway, I've rambled on long enough, but not a good way to start the year. Tragic all around. And yeah, you just got to be careful what you're going to try to believe. And just because this person believed that, it doesn't mean it's true. And we don't know why he killed himself. He didn't say he was going to kill himself, and he was going through some personal issues, apparently. That's generally more likely to lead to someone committing suicide than knowing about a drone. So you guys got to be rational about this stuff. And maybe we'll find out more later. Maybe not. But with the guy being dead, probably not much chance of us learning a whole lot more about him or what he was going through. So anyway, I'm going to let you guys go. Everybody have a great weekend. Keep your head on a swivel, because the year's just starting and it's already going sideways. So take care. I'm out.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Really? Just Stop with your host, Ross. Make sure to like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss a dose of some common sense.